What's up, Stockbridge? First, and anyone watching this is Teens Talk Scripture, our weekly Bible study series. And today we are talking about community. I'm going to spend a couple of weeks talking about the different facets of making a better and brighter community. This week we're talking about embracing differences. If you are watching this in the summer 2020, a change is coming. The Black Lives Matter movement has grown. Every state in this country, protests have been done to embrace the police brutality, racism, and I want you all to know that it's tough right now. I don't have all the answers. Your parents don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers. People in charge don't have all the answers. We wish we can just snap a finger like Thanos and wipe all the racism away. But being realistic, we know that's not going to happen until Jesus comes back and he cleanses the world. So in the meantime, in between time, we have to work with the world that we have. I want to focus today on embracing differences. However you feel right now, I want you to understand Jesus' number one commandment is to love your neighbor. No matter how you feel about mistreatment, no matter how you feel about injustice, Jesus' number one commandment is to love your neighbor. And a great way to love your neighbor is by embracing differences. I'm going to focus on Jesus calling his 12 disciples. I consider myself a born-again Christian. And when I think about my days in Sunday school when I was younger and I thought about the 12 disciples, I'm thinking about them being best friends. I'm thinking that these were the most perfect Christians ever, and that's why Jesus chose them. And maybe you think that too. Maybe you haven't gotten deep in the text, and maybe that's your rosy perception of the 12 disciples. I'm here to mess up your views. The 12 disciples, when you really analyze it, they might have not been the best of friends from the beginning. Jesus almost put a ragtag group of misfits together to make the A-Team. That's a show from the 80s. That's a really good show that you should watch it. But I'm old and you probably don't care about the A-Team. Whatever. We're going to focus on the text where Jesus calls his disciples. And we're going to focus on some of their backgrounds and maybe the problems they dealt with. Think about the power of being different. The power of being around people that don't think exactly the same way you do. Before I even get into the text, here's a challenge. Think about someone who's had great influence in your life. Someone that has molded you, sculpted you, someone where you really care about their opinion, someone who's taught you some life lessons that you would have never got on your own. My question is, this person, if you had to describe them, did they come from a different background? Do they look exactly like you do? Did they have the same upbringing, the same experiences that you did? I'm assuming probably not. I'm thinking about the people who's had great influence on me, different race, different age group from me. Some people who've had great influence on me, I've told them before that under different circumstances, we would have never been friends. We would have never met in life. Once again, I challenge you. The people who've really changed you, did they have a different background as you? Let's get into the text. Mark chapter 3, verses 13 through 21 from the NLT version. Afterward, Jesus went up on a mountain and called out the ones he wanted to go with him. And they came to him. Then he appointed 12 of them and called them his apostles. They were to accompany him, and he would send them out to preach, giving them authority to cast out demons. These are the 12 he chose: Simon, who he named Peter, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, but Jesus nicknamed them sons of thunder, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him. One time Jesus entered a house and the crowds began to gather again. Soon he and his disciples couldn't even find time to eat. When his family heard what was happening, they tried to take him away. He's out of his mind, they said. You might be asking yourself, Al, that is the most boring piece of text. You just gave me the names. How does that teach me about the differences? The ha-ha. Bear with me, be patient, all right? So let's get into these names of the people who Jesus called. First person, Simon, who he called Peter. Peter was known of being very passionate and almost so passionate to a fault. Think about that friend who is gung-ho, down for everything, and sometimes they speak up so much that they get themselves in trouble. Jesus put that person in his squad. Now Peter, whose original name was Simon, his brothers Andrew is also part of the 12 disciples. They're fishermen. And guess what? James and John, who are brothers, they were also fishermen. In the gospel, it tells a story of Jesus meeting Peter, and Andrew tells them to come join him. Jesus walks further down and he tells James and John to join him. So we got a pair of brother fishermen and another pair of brother fishermen. Now, a little context, these double brothers were not working in one company, all right? And the businesses were normally family owned. So we have one family business, further down another family business. So you can think that they're probably rivals, business competition, Coke and Pepsi, McDonald's and Burger King, all right? So Jesus put that on his squad. Let's go an extra step. James and John, as I said before in the text, Jesus nicknamed them Sons of Thunder. When you read this, you might be like, whatever, but in my research, it says Sons of Thunder might have meant that they were quick-tempered, like brrr, thunder, lightning, like if they go from 0 to 100 real quick, and we have some biblical evidence of that. Luke chapter 9, verses 51 through 55. As the time drew near for him to ascend to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. He sent messengers ahead to a Samaritan village to prepare for his arrival. But the people of the village did not welcome Jesus because he was on his way to Jerusalem. When James and John saw this, they said to Jesus, "Lord, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them. Jesus put those do or die people on his team. The villagers did not welcome Jesus, and James and John says, let's burn them up, yo, let's burn them up. Jesus put those brothers in his squad, the Sons of Thunder. Are you a son of thunder? Daughter of thunder? Do you know somebody who's a son or daughter of thunder? Continuing with the roll call of the disciples, we got Matthew, who's a Jew, who's also a tax collector. Now, Matthew was considered a traitor amongst his own people. The Jews did not like the tax collectors, so for Matthew to be a part of the enemy, Matthew was hated. Jesus put someone who was hated. Jesus put someone who chose a profession that the Jewish community didn't approve of in his squad. Continuing with Jesus, picking people different, picking people who you think he should not be friends with, part of his team, a part of his community. We've got Simon the Zealot. He was considered an extremist. But I know we do have opinions of people in the world who, when they follow their religion, they consider themselves extremists. We sometimes think those type of people take it to the next level. They take their beliefs too far. Simon the Zealot, Simon the extremist. Jesus put an extremist a part of his squad. We have Doubting Thomas a part of his squad. Thomas, who didn't believe that Jesus was resurrected until he saw him for himself. We don't know much of the details about Thomas' life, but with that evidence, some scholars say that Thomas might have been the stubborn one of the group. And we've got Judas. Judas, who from the get-go is labeled as the one who's going to betray Jesus. Like, they put the spoiler right there. You don't even have to wait to read. Boom, Judas. He's going to mess it up for Jesus. And then also, when you think about it, Jesus knew what was going to happen in his life. Jesus, the Son of God, already expected this. Yet Jesus still chose Judas to be a part of his squad. So that's a summary of some of the disciples and their different background. Jesus chooses this team. He embraces their differences. And in the process of picking this team, Jesus is questioned by his own family. Don't forget, verse 21, when his family heard what was happening, they tried to take him away. He's out of his mind, they said. Jesus is going to devote his life to ministry. In the process, he chooses 12 disciples who come from different walks of life, and as I described some of their personalities, this isn't necessarily a group of people who've been doing religion and they've been studying the Bible, and these are people who you consider pastors. He didn't choose the ones that you think should be perfect. He chose people who probably made mistakes. He chose the sons of thunder, a part of his team. He chose someone who's going to betray him. He chose a tax collector who was hated by his own people. And his family said he must be out of his mind. I started saying, I don't have all the answers, but I do have a question for you. Why? Why do you think Jesus chose this group? Why do you think Jesus commissioned these men to spread his message, to cast out demons? All different. Why? The Son of God was able to embrace differences to do God's work. Can't we do the same? A scholar was asked, why did Jesus choose Judas? And the scholar retorted, I'm not worried about that. Why did Jesus choose me? The purpose of today's message is just for you all to consider the power of embracing differences, the power of embracing people who think differently than you. We live in a climate where we like to be in our own echo chamber. If you don't know what an echo chamber is, on Facebook or Instagram, you tend to subscribe, like, follow to people that you like, people that think like you, as opposed to watching TV and watching the news, and they control what you see. They control all the information that you receive. In social media, you control it. We tend to select information that agrees with our perspective on life. Process of that, you block out so many other different ideas that when you're exposed to it, it's seen as foreign and it's seen as wrong. Now, there's some things in life we should block out. We should block out the enemy's message. We should block out things that are hurtful to us, hurtful to others, things that break down society. I just want to remind you, Jesus, the Son of God, when he brought his 12 disciples together, I think he brought people that might have argued with one another. Luke chapter 9, verse 46, the disciples argue about which one of them is the greatest. That's just one sample. Imagine the stuff that wasn't written in the Bible. As you continue living your week, I pray for a better community. I pray for healing in this country, in this world. But I also celebrate the togetherness. I celebrate the power of people understanding that there is a greater evil that must be defeated. It's a beautiful sight to see people from different backgrounds coming together for a just cause. Embrace differences for a better community. You are worthy.